Welcome to the Renewed Wife podcast, and I know that this is not where you want to be spending your time. I know you don't want to have to deal with this. You don't want to have to learn about this, but I am glad that you have found this podcast, and I'm glad you're here because I am going to help you work through these things. And on this episode specifically, today we are going to talk about, the question. I discovered that my husband watches pee. And what do I do about it? So I like to call it pee because you might be listening to this, with ears around that you don't want to hear that word. And also because that word can be a trigger depending on what stage of healing you are in yourself. So a little bit about my story. 3 years ago, I had what we call a discovery day with my husband. And that was when I discovered that he had an issue with pee. And it also just happened to be the same day that my 3-year-old daughter at the time was put on hospice care. So it felt like a terrible betrayal. It felt, I just felt so desperate, hurt. And those are some things that you may be feeling right now, but it doesn't have to be that way forever, even though in the moment it feels that way. And so by the end of this podcast, you'll no longer feel alone, and you'll feel equipped to be able to take your first step towards working through this and towards working to, get to a place of healing. So discovering that your husband has this issue can be a deeply painful and confusing experience, especially within the context of a Christian marriage. We made our vows to each other, including to forsake all others. And so when you enter into that, you expect that to be upheld, and this is just like an utter betrayal whenever those vows are broken. And so, we're going to explore in this episode more emotions, questions, and concerns that may arise. And then I'm going to provide some guidance on how to move forward in a way that promotes healing, restoration, and renewed intimacy within your marriage. So that's what we want, even though you may be in the stage that it feels like this is never going to happen for you and it feels hopeless, but I want to encourage you that it doesn't have to be that way forever. So number one, acknowledging your emotions is important in this because this is trauma, regardless of what the culture and the world wants to say about pee, how normal it is, how it's just a part of life and things like that. That's not the truth for us as Christians. We don't believe that. We don't believe that that's normal. First of all, it talks a lot in the Bible about lust. And specifically, if something, if your eyes cause you to sin, pluck them out. And then if I think it says your left hand causes you to sin, cut it off. And so that's pretty serious, and that's pretty straightforward with, dealing with that, regardless of what the culture wants to say about how great it is, how normal it is, and how you should just get over it. So you can acknowledge that you're upset about this, and it's completely normal to be upset. You should not have to deal with this, and you shouldn't be okay with this. So it's very important to also realize that what he is doing or what he did is not your fault. So don't buy into any lies, in case there are any around in your own head coming from him, that it was your fault in any way. So he made the choice, and he cannot blame you for this. It's his actions. He decided to do that. And so I hope that he hasn't blamed you. Maybe you're in a position where he hasn't, but maybe you've blamed yourself, questioned, what did I do? What did I not do? And so you have to get to this place where you believe that it wasn't your fault. And that can take some time, but you keep repeating that to yourself. This wasn't me. I didn't do this. And so I know that you want this day to just be behind you. I know you don't want to have to deal with this. If you want this to be behind you completely in the future, it may take some time. But if you want it to be behind you, then you're going to have to at least adopt the belief that it wasn't your fault until you can actually believe it. And so, just don't get stuck dwelling on the thought that you had anything to do with the choice that he made to betray you and your family. So just remember that with God, you can get through this. Your husband can get through this, and you can have a renewed marriage. So let's move on to some things that you can start doing, some first steps that you can take after you make this discovery about him. So having open communication and then seeking help can be huge in the process of working towards, reconciliation. So a big thing that I see a lot of people doing is just ignoring it, not telling the person how they actually feel about it, not trying to have that conversation, because the conversation is extremely, it can be very awkward and hard to have. And if they don't say what you want to hear, it's going to hurt. And so there's a lot of people that avoid that, but this is not going to help you. It's not going to help your marriage to avoid it. So you have to have open communication with each other, and then seeking help. You want to bring others into this who know what they're talking about, who can actually help you. So when you're expressing your concerns and feelings to your husband, one thing that you're going to have to work through and talk about is setting boundaries and consequences. That's one thing that is going to help so if you are communicating boundaries, for example, then you're going to be able to let your husband know exactly what you expect of him, and he's going to let you in on that process of setting consequences as well, because boundaries don't work without consequences. What's the point if you can just cross a boundary and nothing happens? And so you're going to have that open communication to be able to have that conversation, to sit down together, set these boundaries, and let each other know your expectations and that you're going to work together towards this, and then also setting consequences. So we do provide guidance on setting healthy boundaries within your marriage to protect your marriage, to protect yourself, and to promote healing. We have a course on that, so that's going to be linked in the show notes, or you can go to renewed-marriage.com and go to the store and you'll find it there. But it's all about setting boundaries and consequences. So you also need to start seeking spiritual guidance and support. So who do you know? Of course, you're going to be going to God about this, but who do you know? Do you have a pastor in your life that you can trust to go to talk about this? It's very difficult, or it could be very difficult to talk about, because, you might be embarrassed. He might be embarrassed. He might feel a lot of guilt and shame. And so it can be hard for people to just go and just simply talk about it. But it is very important when you're working towards healing, because those people can help keep you accountable, yourself and your husband accountable. And because there's going to be things that you have to work on too. If you want to heal from this, it's going to take work that you have to do on yourself, along with working through it, through your marriage with your husband. So when you have that spiritual guidance and help from maybe a pastor or somebody, then that's going to help you stay accountable when they're checking with you, saying, how are you doing? What actions are you taking? Things like that. And so, you can also find support groups. So if you join a support group that is specific to, working on healing through this, I will warn you. So I am not against counselors at all, like licensed professional counselors, because that's who mentored me through all of this. But if you're going to go that route, if you feel like you need that, then make sure that it's someone who actually has training in, pornography specifically, because in marriage, and make sure their view of it is similar or the same as yours, as in it's wrong, it's absolutely never, okay, it's lust, things like that, it's sinful, because you can be led astray, and it can cause a lot more turmoil within your marriage if you're seeking this help from someone who doesn't agree that it's wrong, and they're going to lead you down the wrong path, and it can lead you to just a lot more hurt and pain. And so make sure that when you're seeking this help out, that you find someone who has some type of, specific training in this. And so I'm going to close here, but I know that what you're going through is just so painful, and it feels like it will never end, but I can promise you that it will. And it doesn't have to define the future of your marriage. It feels right now like you're going to be dealing with this forever. You can never look at him the same. You can never let him look at his phone the same. You can never go out in public and see people the same. But that can be healed, those parts of you, and you guys can work back together, and no, things will not be the same. But they can be even better than before because you're having this open, clear communication and you're learning these really important skills for a marriage. And so it actually can in the future be even better than it is or was before. But you're not at that point yet, but you can get there. I can promise you that, because with my husband, that's where we're at now, 3 years later, and 3 years free from the P issue. So by acknowledging your emotions, seeking open communication, understanding, that it's not your fault, setting boundaries, and seeking God's guidance and professional help, you can work towards healing, restoration, and renewed intimacy in your marriage. You really can. I want you to believe that, even if it feels like that's not true at all. So we have more resources available for you if you go to renewed-marriage.com, and you can look through the store, you can look through the blog that we're about to have on there, and just remember, you're not alone in this journey. You don't have to be alone. There's no reason for you to feel isolated in this and like you're the only one, because there are people out there who care about you, who care that you're in this situation, and who agree with the way you feel about it. So just reach out to friends, reach out to people that you can trust, that aren't going to judge you or lead you astray, for additional support and encouragement. So thank you for joining us on this episode of Renewed Life. Be sure to subscribe for, future episodes. And we're going to be posting a lot more things to come. And so we're just so excited about that. A lot more resources for you. So keep an eye open for that. And I will mention those on future episodes as we, release new things.